What is up, my spooky mates of YouTube? My name is Aussie Marcel, and in today's video, this is a very special one. This is Aussie Marcel's fragrance iceberg. I've been meaning to do a fragrance iceberg video for so long now. Ever since I first saw Wendigoon's disturbing movie Iceberg, I've been in love with this sort of format. And I'm really excited to share this one with you guys. I've been working on this one for days. It's not very often I put this much effort into a video. I've got sheets and sheets of paper here that I've been working on. I'll show you the iceberg that I drew by hand. It's more of like a pyramid type of scheme thing. But yeah, I've been working on this one. I've been putting in the effort, I've been putting in the miles, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. So if this sounds good to you, let's get into the video.
Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech.
What, did you think he was gonna hack me up into little pieces or something?
Now, if you've never heard of an iceberg before, what it is essentially it's a bunch of layers or levels if you prefer. Up the top is really easy to get into stuff, and down the bottom is the more obscure, esoteric stuff. You can do anything. You can make an iceberg about anything, and I have chosen to do my very own fragrance iceberg, starting with the very obvious and mass appealing stuff up the top, and then at the very bottom we're getting into some dark stuff. This is going to be a long video, but you will learn some stuff about some fragrances you probably haven't heard of, especially down towards the lower tiers. We're going to get really dark with this one, guys. So without any more preamble, let's get into the fragrance iceberg. Starting at tier 1, the tip of the iceberg, we've got Nautica Voyage from 2006. Nautica Voyage is a very easy to love, mass appealing, floral, fresh, fruity sweet fragrance that is beloved by both teenagers and adults alike. You're not going to meet too many people that dislike the way Nautica Voyage smells. It's very obvious, it's such a safe pick, and that's because it's a beloved scent. You can smell this one out in the wild all the time, people love to wear it, it's very sweet, it's very recognizable as well. And if you're after, you know, a very fresh, fruity, floral, sweet fragrance for the summertime, Nautica Voyage is hard to beat. Plus, it's quite affordable as well. You can pick it up for well under 25 bucks Australian, and that is why it's on the first tier of the iceberg. Next up, we've got CK1 from 1994. This is another beloved fragrance. It's on this list and it's at tier 1 just purely because it allowed so many people in the 90s to get into fragrances. Calvin Klein have said that what they wanted to do was combine the feminine florals with the masculine musks and merge them together to create a fragrance, a unisex fragrance for all. They did such a good job with CK1. I like CK1 so much, and it's so affordable that I use it as a room spray sometimes to freshen up the room. You can get 200 ml for about $35 Australian. It's incredible value. There's not many people that dislike the way this one smells. It's a little basic, it's a little generic, especially nowadays. The same can be said for pretty much anything on tier 1, but that's because this is the mass appealing stuff. These are the most beloved fragrances. It's often been said that if you went into a mall in America in the 1990s, you would be guaranteed to smell CK1, and so for that reason it is in tier 1 of the list. Next up is Dior Sauvage from 2015. Dior Sauvage is another obvious pick simply because it's so prevalent out in the wild. You can smell this one. If you're out in Melbourne, you will smell Dior Sauvage. It's a very expensive fragrance at over $120 for a bottle, but it is very popular and the performance is incredible as well. Nowadays it's a little overplayed in a way that, you know, only one other fragrance on this tier can match, but it is a beloved scent for a reason. If you're out in the wild and you want good compliments, you're going to be wearing Dior Sauvage. It's such an obvious, easy pick. I personally am not the biggest fan of it. I much prefer Sauvage Elixir or Sauvage the Eau de Parfum simply because there's a bit more to them. But if you're after an aromatic, sort of warm, lavender forward fragrance that has massive performance and will get you massive compliments, Dior Sauvage is going to be the fragrance for you. Next, from 2008, is Versace Pour Homme. If you're after a fresh, fruity, floral fragrance with a masculine rose note, look no further than Versace Pour Homme. Of all the fragrances at tier 1, this is probably the easiest to wear. I really doubt there's a person on earth that will truly dislike the way this one smells. It's so easy to love, it's so easy to wear. And another thing that this fragrance shares in common with everything else on tier 1 is the versatility. Every fragrance on tier 1 you can wear in almost every situation. Versace Pour Homme is no different. It's fresh enough to be worn in the summertime, but it's got enough to it. It's got enough body and complexity and depth to be worn in the wintertime as well. And if you're after a bit of a cheat code, wear a fresh summery fragrance in wintertime. I can guarantee you will stand out and you will get compliments for it. But yeah, Versace Pour Homme, it's an obvious pick, and that's why it's at tier 1. And finally, rounding out tier 1, we have Paco Rabanne's 1 Million from 2008. This is a very obvious pick. If you're here in Australia, you will smell this one out and about all the time. It is the most popular fragrance that I know of, at least in my area and from my experience. I'm always smelling Paco Rabanne's 1 Million out in the wild. It has that gaudy gold bar. You've probably seen it a million times now. The thing with Paco Rabanne's 1 Million is the performance is incredible. 2 sprays is going to get you well over 12 hours of performance. It is a beast when it comes to performance. I just think it's so overplayed, and people put so many sprays of it on here in Australia that it's just, I'm sick of smelling it, more so than anything else on this list. You know, put this at a tier 8 for me, just simply because I wouldn't wear it. But honestly though, people love the way this one smells, and if you're after something that's sweet, that's going to get you compliments, and it's, you know, versatile enough to be worn in the warmer weather. I wouldn't be wearing it on a stinking hot summer day, but it's awesome for winter, it's awesome for autumn. And yeah, if you're after a, you know, a good value, $110 plus fragrance, then 1 Million is going to be the fragrance for you. It's not my favorite fragrance, but I'm including it at tier 1 simply because it is so popular here in Australia, and you're going to be smelling this everywhere. Now we are on to tier 2, open waters. We're off the iceberg's tip and now into the open waters. The fragrances on tier 2 are also very wearable and are also very mass appealing. They're just a little less common than the fragrances on tier 1, and that's pretty much the main difference between the two. They're of a similar level of likability, it's just that they're a little less common, and we're sort of getting into that territory now where the ingredients are going to be a little different. They're not going to be quite as fresh, not going to be quite as floral or fruity. They're not going to be juvenile, they're going to be a little different. Starting things off, we've got Paco Rabanne's Black XS from 2005, or the reformulation from 2018. Black XS was the fragrance that really got me into the fragrance world. This is the original lighter bottle from 2005. In fact, I bought a bottle in high school and I still have that bottle to this day. Black XS is well known for the strawberry note up top and the patchouli note in the base of the fragrance. It's sweet up top and a little darker, a little more devious down the bottom, if you will. I love it. It's one of the ultimate clubbing fragrances, one of the ultimate going out fragrances. It's been replaced by Paco Rabanne's 1 Million and Paco Rabanne's Invictus, but back in the day, back when I was in high school, you would put on about 10 sprays and then go out to a nightclub. It was the thing to do back when I was a kid. I'm not recommending putting on 10 sprays of anything, honestly, but Black XS is sweet enough to be mass appealing, but it's with that patchouli note in the base. It does have something a little different, something a little left of field. I personally wear it and get massive compliments for it. You should try it sometime. It's a great alternative, and I think it's a better smelling fragrance than Paco Rabanne's 1 Million, and that's why it's at the top of tier 2. Next up is a classic fragrance from 1989, Yo Pomme. This and another fragrance we'll be talking about a little later, quite soon actually. These fragrances in particular were known to be clubbing powerhouses in the very late 80s, at the tail end of the 80s and the early 90s. Yo Pomme, you can read reports about it, that it was smelt everywhere across the nightclubs in Europe and in the United States, and even here in Australia. Yo Pomme has a fragrance community here in Australia. There are a certain group of people that love the way this one smells and have never deviated from it. Personally, I think it smells fantastic. You've got the vanilla, you've got the cinnamon, and that sort of medicinal cherry cough syrup quality to it. I can understand why some people are personally disgusted by the fragrance. It is very overpowering. You only need one spray of it and it lasts over 24 hours on your skin. To some people, this is a tier 8 fragrance. This is going to be something that is abhorrent, it is obscene to the senses, it is that strong. But to another type of person, this is a cheeky, sweet and playful clubbing scent. Whether you love it or loathe it, this fragrance isn't too dark. There's enough here to be mass appealing and likable, and that's why I've put it at tier 2. Next up is another fragrance from the 1980s, Drakkar Noir from 1982. This fragrance for me is very special. It was one of the very first fragrances I ever smelt. My dad used to wear this one when we'd go out for dinner, and ever since then, it's been a beloved fragrance for me. I love the way Drakkar Noir smells. Drakkar Noir has that old school barbershop quality to it. You used to smell fragrances like that, well, at least when I was a kid, you used to smell them everywhere. Nowadays, that sort of style of scent, that sort of aromatic, lavender forwards, old school quality, it's not the most popular fragrance nowadays, but it's undeniably masculine, and occasionally you will still smell Drakkar Noir out in the wild. I often wear Drakkar Noir just simply because of how wearable and versatile it is. I would personally almost put this at a tier 1, but because of the old school quality for it and the nostalgia, I'm putting it at tier 2. I love the way Drakkar Noir smells, and it's very popular elsewhere in the world, especially with older gentlemen in particular, but you will meet some people that don't like the way it smells, and for that reason I put it at tier 2. And finally, from 1990, we've got Calvin Klein's Eternity, the Eau de Toilette. If you're after a unique smelling green fragrance, try Calvin Klein's Eternity. To me, this almost doesn't smell very manly. It's kind of like a unisex fragrance. If you're after something unique, green, and herbal, and a little aromatic as well, try Calvin Klein's Eternity for men. This is a beautiful fragrance, and I think it smells so unique and so different that it almost could have come from 2023, it could have come from last year, it could have come from very recently. It doesn't smell old school to my nose, and it also gets quite a few compliments as well. As far as like an entry-level introduction to a more unique style of fragrances, this is a great intro to that. I personally think it's got enough mass appealing qualities that it warrants being on tier 2, but you personally might put this a little lower at tier 3 simply because it doesn't smell like the most mass appealing fragrance. It doesn't smell like everything else on the market that's popular. I love the way this one smells, and it deserves its spot at tier 2. There is a definite mainstream quality to CK's Eternity. There's enough here in CK Eternity to warrant it being in the tier 2 rather than the tier 1. But I'd be curious to know where you would put CK Eternity in your tier. It's not the most obvious fragrance for compliments and wearability, but there's just something about that aromatic, herbal, green quality to it. I love the way this one smells, and that's why I put it at tier 2. We're at tier 3 now, in the deeper waters. These fragrances, we're starting to go into different sort of styles, different sort of notes that aren't going to be prevalent in the first 2 tiers. So let's get right into it. From 2017, Mercedes-Benz Club Black. 3 words: vanilla, incense, sexy. This is an infinitely wearable, sexy introduction to an incense note when it comes to perfumery. I love the way this one smells, and somebody told me a long time ago that it smells like a masculine cupcake, and ever since then it's just stuck into my brain, that sort of description for Club Black. I love the way it smells. With 1 to 2 sprays you're going to get over 12 hours of performance. It's ideal for the colder weather, but you can still wear it in the springtime and the fall as well, or autumn if you're here in Australia. I love the way it smells. It's affordable at under $40 Australian. It used to be more expensive than that at like $80, but it's come down in price significantly. It's actually basically half price at Chemist Warehouse now. They must have a huge amount of the stock, at least where I live, because you can get this for only $40. I love the way Club Black smells. It gets me a massive amount of compliments. It's at tier 3 simply because you've got that incense smoky note, and not everybody's going to find it appealing. It's also got a prominent amber note as well, and we're going to be getting into those sort of ingredients now where people are going to be off-put by a certain ingredient or a style of the fragrance, but there's still enough here that it's still going to be appealing to a lot of people. Next up, from 1981, we've got Yves Saint Laurent's Kouros. This fragrance is that perfect convergence between clean and dirty. Some people refer to it as a barnyard scent. It's got that sort of pissy, barnyardy quality to it because of the musks and the animalic notes in it. I think this one smells fantastic. A lot of people give me compliments for it, but I have worn it a couple of times and people have gone, "What are you wearing? I don't like the way that one smells," and I completely understand why, because it has that something in the background that just makes it dirty and animalic. Kouros is a solid introduction to the more animalic world of fragrances. Kouros is a very masculine smelling fragrance. It is ultra masculine, and a lot of those animalic qualities of Kouros are actually softened by some of the honey and floral notes in the scent. It does come across more soft than dark or dirty, but it still has that backbone that makes people go, "What are you wearing? I don't know if I like it or love it." So for that reason, it's at tier 3. You may put it at a tier 1, for example. You may get nothing but positive attention for it, but my experience has been that it does have that barnyard quality to it that makes some people dislike the way it smells, but to each their own. Next up, from 2011, is one of my favorite scents of all time, Dior Homme Intense. This is at tier 3, but it could very easily be a tier 2 fragrance. It is powdery, it has some leathery qualities to it as well, and it's got that really prominent iris note. It's great for the evening time in winter. It's not the most versatile fragrance, like you'd be hard pressed to wear this in the summertime because you will stink out a room quite easily. But yeah, once I've opened it, I can't stop smelling it. It smells fantastic. It's a beautiful smelling fragrance. The performance is incredible. The price is going to be off-putting for a lot of people, and that's partly the reason why I put this at tier 3. It's well over $200 Australian, but what you do get is a niche quality fragrance. This fragrance, despite being a designer brand, it is almost unlike anything else on the market, except maybe Prada L'Homme or something by Valentino, like one of the Valentino Uomo fragrances. This is an exceptional scent. Dior Homme Intense is popular in the mainstream, and it is in the mainstream. Having said that though, there are a certain amount of people that will dislike the way this one smells, simply because it's almost got like a bug spray quality to it. It isn't the darkest fragrance, it isn't the most difficult to wear scent, and it does have many people that love this one, as Dior Homme Intense doesn't have the qualities, those really likable notes and accords that tier 1 and tier 2 fragrances have. That's why I've included it at tier 3. Realistically, it may go bump up a little higher at a tier 2. There's going to be a lot of people that love the way this one smells, but it's always going to have a certain subset of people that just dislike the way it smells. They're not going to vibe with how powdery it is. They're not going to like the kind of earthy, leathery quality to it either. I get nothing but compliments for it, but you will meet people that dislike the way this one smells. It is a good intro to a darker, more refined sort of style of fragrance, and that's why I've put it at tier 3. Next up is the big brother of Eternity Eau de Parfum. This fragrance reminds me of another fragrance that will be on the list a little later. It is more deep, more aromatic, more herbal, and almost more medicinal and earthy than Eternity the EDT. If you're after a safer pick, go with the EDT, but if you're after something that is going to turn more heads with how unique it is, definitely check out the Eau de Parfum. It is a much darker fragrance. It still has that Eternity backbone though. It's still going to have people giving you compliments for it. And I tried this out on some of my younger cousins and they like the way it smells. So it's got enough to it. It's got enough mass appealing qualities to it that it's even going to appeal to teenagers and young adults. But it does veer into that territory where you're experimenting with different styles of notes and accords here. The fragrance is undoubtedly darker. It is sort of where the Eternity EDT was a bright, humid day in a forest. This is a damp night in the forest. It's just earthier and darker, and it's a less safe choice than the Eternity EDT, but it still has enough of a likability to it that people will compliment you for it. And that's why I've put it at tier 3. And finally, rounding out tier 3, we have Nude Deity by Issey Miyake 2014. And once Eternity the EDP dries down, it does remind me of Nude Deity. Nude Deity has enough of a vanilla note that's still going to give you a lot of compliments. It is darker and smokier than, say, Mercedes-Benz Club Black. I've always found the note of vanilla to be great for compliments, and that's why I couldn't justify putting this a little lower on the list. There is one fragrance that is similar to this that is on the tier 4, we'll get to that in a second, but Issey Miyake's Nude Deity from 2014 is a beautiful fragrance. Nude Deity from 2014 has a vanilla note, it's got a lot of incense to it as well, and it's got an amberish quality to it. think of it sort of like Mercedes-Benz Club Black, but it's more of a leather jacket, black tie sort of style of fragrance rather than the more playful Mercedes-Benz Club Black. It's a little more mature, it's a little more refined. Nuit d'Issy gets me a lot of compliments, but it can be a little strong, it can be a little overwhelming and challenging for some people, so that's why I put it at tier 3. But it's the vanilla note and that sort of refined smokiness. For those reasons, I'm including it at a tier 3 rather than a tier 4. Now we're getting into the really good stuff with tier 4. This is the sort of level of the iceberg. Well, between level 3, 4 and 5 is really where I like to gravitate towards when it comes to these fragrances. And we're starting off this list with one of my personal favorites of all time, Zadig and Voltaire's This Is Him from 2016. This is like Nuit d'Issy and Club Black on steroids. It is vanilla, it is smoky, it's just much more rock and roll than both of those fragrances. That incense note is so strong in it that it's going to be off-putting to some people, but it's still going to get you some compliments. As it sort of matches my style, I get a lot of compliments for it, but you sort of, at this sort of tier and level of the iceberg, you sort of have to match your fragrances to your outfit. Previously, you can sort of wear anything with anything and it's going to work, but with tier 4, a lot of these fragrances are going to appeal to a certain style and you've got to sort of wear a certain style of clothing for them. Zadig and Voltaire's This Is Him is sort of no different to that. If you love your rock and roll, your heavy metal, your punk rock, things like that, but you still want to smell fantastic, gravitate towards something like Zadig and Voltaire's This Is Him. It's going to get you massive compliments, and it's not the most expensive scent either. You can pick up bottles of it for well under $80. It's got a tiny bit of patchouli in it, but if you're after a more patchouli dominant version of This Is Him, try Just Rock by Zadig and Voltaire. That replaces some of the incense with more patchouli. It's just a different sort of style of the same fragrance. If you're after more patchouli, go with Just Rock. If you want more vanilla and smoke, go with This Is Him. Next up, as I alluded to before when I was talking about Yo Pom, Dior Fahrenheit from 1988. This was previously a clubbing powerhouse. One spray of this is going to last you all night. It smells like gasoline in the opening, and that's why it's at tier 4 with that gasoline opening. But once you sort of live with the fragrance a little bit, you discover that it's got a lot of violet to it. It's very floral and leathery as well, but it's the gasoline or petrol opening that is off-putting to some people. It is ultimately masculine until you reach a certain point of experience with the scent, and then it kind of comes across as unisex just because of how floral, how secretly floral this fragrance is. It is one of the most beast mode fragrances of all time, and I would wear this over Dior Sauvage any day of the week. This is simply a masterpiece. Some people might put this at a tier 5. They might think it's different and wild enough to be at the tier 5, lower still, but I think it's got enough of a mass appealing quality to it that it warrants being at tier 4. I love the way this one smells, but it is a controversial pick for some people. You will meet people that dislike the way this one smells, inevitably, undoubtedly, because of that gasoline, that petrol opening. If you want that, check out Dior's Fahrenheit. It's on the pricier side. It's at a similar price to Dior's Sauvage at about 130 bucks. I think it smells fantastic. It is one of the best performing fragrances. It's one of my favorites, and it is on tier 4. Next up, from 2006, we have Lalique's Encre Noir. If you've unfortunately experienced bushfires before, you will know what this one smells like. To my nose, this smells like gum trees on fire. It's got that smoky incense quality, but it also has like a eucalypt burning smell. It's very aromatic, green, it's almost piney and coniferous. It's beautiful. It's such a dark fragrance. You will meet people that dislike the way this one smells on you, but you will also meet people that love the way this one smells. Personally, I think it's got a good balance between likability and uniqueness. It's such a beautiful, daring fragrance. It's dark in such a positive way. If you want a fragrance that smells like a bushfire, that smells like burning and pine, then definitely check out Encre Noir. It's fantastic. You can pick up bottles of this in Australia for under 50 bucks at Chemist Warehouse, but they do tend to sell quickly because fans of niche fragrances and good quality designer scents will be picking this one up. Next up from 2015, we've got John Varvatos' Dark Rebel, and I'm sharing this spot with John Varvatos' Dark Rebel Rider from 2016. If you're after a more smoky scent, then check out Dark Rebel. If you're after a more leathery, ambery scent, check out Dark Rebel Rider. These two fragrances are beautiful, but they do have their detractors. Dark Rebel is more of your bad boy, your suave bad boy, and Dark Rebel Rider is more for your sort of bike riding bad boy. They're both fantastic fragrances for compliments, but you will meet people that think they're off-putting. They don't have a lot of the likable qualities that the tier 1 and the tier 2 scents have. These are dark fragrances, don't get me wrong. Both of these fragrances are great choices if you want something dark that's still going to get you compliments. Rumor has it they are discontinued, so you will be paying a pretty penny for them on eBay and at online discounters, but you never know, sometimes you might get lucky like I did and get a bottle of Dark Rebel Rider for 40 bucks Australian brand new. Check them out if they sound appealing to you. They are dark, but they aren't so dark that they will be off-putting to everyone. Next up from 2015, we have Boss Bottled Oud, and this is probably the darkest Boss Bottled fragrance, and it is the first oud fragrance on the list. If you're after a easy to like oud based fragrance, even though it's a synthetic sort of oud, check out Boss Bottled Oud. The note of oud, when used in certain ways, can come across very fecal and dirty and grimy and animalic, but when it's synthetic and used like Hugo Boss have done with Boss Bottled Oud, it comes across as very luxurious and rich, and for that reason I'm putting it at a tier 4. Some people may even put it at a tier 3 just because it's one of the more wearable and likable fragrances on this tier 4. But the note of oud, you're going to meet people that dislike the way it smells, and Boss Bottled Oud is no different. It has that luxurious woodiness, it has the spicy quality, and it has that synthetic, luxurious, decadent oud note, but it is synthetic. Anyways, I think it smells fantastic. It can be on the pricey side, but I have seen bottles at about $100 Australian. If that sounds good to you, check it out, but I'm putting it at tier 4 because it's at that middle ground between likability and being dark and different and unique. And finally, to round out tier 4, we have from 1993 Sergei Lutin's Ombre Sultan. This fragrance has an amber note that is so decadent and luxurious and lavish that it comes across almost as animalic, and there are people that will dislike how dense and powerful this one is. This fragrance lasts for 48 hours plus with 2 sprays, even though it's been reformulated. It is a very old school sort of animalic scent in how the amber is presented. It can come across as animalic and musky depending on your bottle that you get. My sample of Ombre Sultan sort of reminds me of Mercedes-Benz Club Black turned up to like 20 on the scale. It is very, very dense and heavy and hangs around and it stays in the room, and it just comes across as very almost resinous in a way, but it does smell very lavish and luxurious and very wealthy at the same time. It's an expensive scent, but you do get what you pay for with that, and that's why I'm including it at tier 4. Some people may put it a little lower. That animalic quality may make people want to put it at a tier 5, but I think it's very luxurious smelling and it will get you a lot of compliments. So with that said, we have finished tier 4 and we're getting into the really good stuff now, the stuff that is going to be off-putting to a lot of people. And with that out of the way, that is the end of the first part of the fragrance iceberg. If you've gotten up to this point of the video, let me know in the comments below. Let me know that you've gotten to the end of the video. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this one because I've been working on this video for hours and hours and days. I've never put this much effort into a video before, but it's something that I've been passionate about for so long and I just needed to get it out of my system. The next part of the fragrance iceberg will be out either tomorrow or in the coming days, and eventually after I've got the first 2 parts out, I'm going to release the version of the iceberg in its entirety for those who just want to sit and watch it from the beginning to the end. So with that all being said, thank you very much for watching this video, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to make despite how lengthy and arduous the process has been. And until the next video, or at least the next part of the fragrance iceberg, my name is Aussie Marcel, and I will catch you guys around.